It's now time to take a look at news making headlines, all around the world. Of course, we begin right here at home. As the Minister of Defense, General Christopher Musa, retired, has warned Sheikh Ahmed Gumi and others sympathetic to terrorists and bandits to stop their subversive endeavor, saying, and I quote, "A friend of a thief is a thief." Speaking yesterday during an official visit to Maiduguri, the minister said those engaged in acts of terrorism and banditry did not represent any form of regional, ethnic or religious brotherhood. The warning came as the Nigerian army said it had taken a significant step towards strengthening its manpower development and national security framework with the construction of a new training depot at Amasiri, Eda, located within Afikpo and Eda local government areas of Ebonyi State. Musa explained that his remarks were deliberate and purposeful, not merely symbolic. He stressed that Nigerians must refrain from supporting or justifying criminal activities in any form. He said the warning directly responded to narratives previously advanced by Sheikh Gumi, who had referred to bandits hiding in forests as, and I quote, "our brothers," and suggested that society could not function without them. Musa stated that Nigeria could not defeat terrorism and banditry while dangerous narratives blurred the line between victims and perpetrators. Now on to some cheery news, as the federal government has recorded a major breakthrough in the education sector with the signing of a renegotiated agreement with the Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASU. The agreement, which takes effect from January 1st, is expected to finally put an end to decades of industrial actions in public universities. After 16 years of tough negotiations dating back to 2009, both parties say the new deal is mutually beneficial. Arise News correspondent Juliet Obata reports.
After 16 years of prolonged negotiations, deadlocks and repeated strikes, the federal government and the Academic Staff Union of Universities have finally reached a consensus with the signing of the 2025 renegotiated agreement. The original 2009 federal government ASU agreement was due for review in 2012, but the process dragged on for years without resolution. A fresh renegotiation process was initiated in 2017 to review the 2009 agreement and address the growing challenges facing Nigeria's university system.
This agreement represents the culmination of sustained dialogue between the federal government of Nigeria, FGN, and the Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASU, and reaffirms our collective commitment to the stability, quality, and global competitiveness of Nigeria's public university system. Since 2009, negotiations between FGN and ASU have constituted one of the most prolonged and consequential labor engagements in Nigeria's public sector.
This led to the setting up of several renegotiation committees, beginning with the Wale Babalaki Committee in 2017 under the administration of late President Muhammadu Buhari. In 2021, the Buhari government inaugurated another committee headed by Muzali Jibrin, followed in 2022 by the Nimi Briggs-led committee. Despite these efforts, negotiations between 2017 and 2022 failed to produce a new collective bargaining agreement. Fast forward to 2024, the President Bola Tinubu administration inaugurated a fresh renegotiation committee chaired by Yayali Ahmed in October. 14 months later, the process has culminated in the signing of the 2025 renegotiated FG-ASU agreement.
Usually, when at the end of struggles like this, it creates a paradox. It pushes for proper funding, but once funds arrive, there are limited institutional mechanisms for the union to enforce. Our union also wants to specially appreciate the Honorable Minister of Education, Dr. Tunji Maruf Alausa.
The new agreement addresses key issues, including conditions of service, university funding, autonomy, academic freedom, and other systemic reforms aimed at reversing decay, curbing brain drain, and repositioning Nigerian universities for national development.
Today's agreement is a clear and deliberate, with unprecedented demonstration of the commitment of His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR to quality, accessible, and uninterrupted academic calendars for all Nigerian students in a tertiary institution. The agreement provides for the review of the remuneration package of academic staff in federal tertiary institutions, as approved by the National Salaries, Income and Wages Commission. And this agreement, I'm making promise to you today, this agreement will be effective from January 1st, and was effective from January 1st, 2026.
As part of the agreement, the federal government has approved 9 new allowances for university lecturers, including a professorial cadre allowance of 1.74 million naira per annum. Juliet Obata, Arise News.
Of course, we pray that it will be sustained. Now on to other news. As Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission, NUPRC, yesterday met with prospective bidders of the 50 oil and gas blocks currently on offer in the 2025 oil licensing round and other stakeholders in the Nigerian oil and gas industry for interaction on the modalities and expectations for the exercise. The pre-bid conference, which took place in Lagos, was attended by top government officials, members of the Oil Producers Trade Section, OPTS, Independent Petroleum Producers Group, IPPG, emerging players and other major stakeholders in the oil and gas industry. At the event, Chief Executive of NUPRC, Orishameyiwa Eyeson, announced a reduction in entry costs for the licensing round, including a revision of the signature bonus and other pre-first oil fees as part of ongoing reforms to attract investment into Nigeria's upstream sector. According to her, lessons from previous licensing rounds have informed the 2025 licensing round with a renewed focus on attracting capable investors in the 50 assets on offer. Eyeson further announced a major policy shift aimed at reducing barriers to entry into the sector. On to the other news, the Trump administration is placing an indefinite pause on immigrant visa processing from 75 countries, further restricting the legal routes for entering the United States. The State Department on Wednesday said the administration wants to bring an end to the abuse of the system by those who would extract wealth from the American people by using welfare and public benefits. The order takes effect on 21 January, but a full list of the 75 countries has not yet been released. No fewer than 5,000 intending Nigerian immigrants to the United States may be delayed following the new visa restrictions. Data from the U.S. consulate in Lagos shows that 5,626 immigrant visas were issued in 2023, up from 4,219 in 2022, an increase of 1,407 visas within a year. Additionally, a total of 70,621 Nigerians were issued U.S. immigrant and non-immigrant visas in 2024. Now to Rivers State, where 2 more members of the Rivers State House of Assembly have joined the call on the Speaker, Martins Amaule, and other members to withdraw the impeachment process filed against Governor Siminalayi Fubara and the Deputy Governor, Professor Ngozi Odu. At a press briefing, Barile Nwako, representing Kana Constituency 1, and Emilia Amadi, representing Obioakpo Constituency 2, say despite being part of the notice of allegations of gross misconduct against Governor Fubara, they're calling for a political solution rather than impeachment. They say this is not a sign of weakness, but a demonstration of forgiving hearts as mothers. They joined 2 other lawmakers who previously withdrew from the impeachment threat, making a similar call on their colleagues. All right, well, there we have it. Quite a broad mix of big and important stories this morning. Rufai, your take.
So, number one, I'm happy that General Musa has come out to say a friend of a thief is a thief. And that statement is very heavy. Because, you see, as we celebrate Armed Forces Remembrance Day, and I pay tribute to all of our great, valiant troops that fight day and night and lose their life on the battlefront, and I call for improved welfare. It is very shocking that those that have perpetrated the narrative of the criminal terrorists in this country the most are people that served in the Nigerian army at one point or the other. People like Sheikh Gumi. So the question we should ask people like Sheikh Gumi is, where is your esprit de corps? It's so easy for you to call bandits, criminals, terrorists, our brothers in the bush, to advocate for their welfare. And when you hear some of his arguments, oh, they don't have water, they don't have this, they don't have education, most parts of Nigeria too do not have that. Most parts of Nigeria too do not have that. Come to some parts in the southwest here and see the deplorable state of the healthcare. See the deplorable state of hospitals. Most villages do not have pipe-borne running water. But they have not taken to arm and criminality and banditry. And I feel very sad this morning because this was somebody that served in the military. So please, General Musa, I don't just want you to say it as words. Match it up with action. Second layer is the state governors. Especially our very dear friend that said the position of a governor is so hard for him. And I really feel a lot of pity for him. In fact, I think I'm ready. I can offer therapy for him. If he wants, one-to-one counseling, I'll just tell him it is well. In fact, if he gives me, I can be calling him every time and just be, telling him that it is well, don't worry. I know the position of being a governor is too hard for you. But it's so hard that you're negotiating with bandits at the expense of people in your state being killed. And you say you are doing peace deals. And bandits were roaming around every part of your state in a bid to have peace. You even had the unmitigated temerity to send your commissioners to tell us Nigerians that those that have problems with your peace deal, they should shut up while you were trying to negotiate a release for these bandits. General Musa, I think you should add the governor of Katsina State to also your list. Because as far as I'm concerned, those that negotiate with bandits and do peace deals, put them on the list. I think Kaduna too recently had one negotiation or a peace deal, if my memory serves me, or they've had in the past. Any state that is found wanting, put them in the list. Negotiate and placate and forgive bandits when they are killing our troops. You think our troops do not have a life to live? You think their family members are happy about how they are killed? Then the third layer, General Musa should look at, are the media spinners. Those that come and say, don't profile them. Don't profile them. It exacerbates the conflict. Don't profile them. Don't do profiling. Don't mention anything. In a country where they are killing people. So people that are killing people should not be mentioned, should not be named. Oh, so that we will not fall in the path of political higri-bigri. Is that it? These were the same people that say, oh, there's a difference between terrorists and bandits. Bandits, oh, they do this just, no. People that terrorize people are terrorists. These bandits terrorize people, so they are terrorists. So those that come and spew all sorts of media narrative in defense of these people, General Musa, add them to the lists. This include commentators, analysts, those that come and talk and do propaganda. They think we do not know their narrative. They spew it and they put it with an air of neutrality and say, oh, I'm neutral in this. I've done my research. They parade themselves as experts. Stop it! The last point, please, if I might be allowed to speak on this FG ASU issue. Welcome development. But the thing with agreements is, like Wike was singing, agreement is agreement, yo, but I even want to sing the proper song that was made by Nkemowo, Ukwa. Agreement is agreement, yo. It don't reach it for settlement. You can't they tell me nonsense. Agreement is agreement, yo. I don't want to regale you with the historical antecedents of this agreement, but hope it will not be the time for settlement. And the federal government will change story. It's a win for Tinubu's administration. Yes, you can parrot it any way you want. But hope when it's time for settlement, when it gets to the 3-year threshold for the review, we are not going to hear all sorts. I yield the floor.
Okay, very quickly, let's start with agreement. Now, the principle that governs agreements between parties is trust and good faith and the belief, the conviction that those agreements will be implemented. In some other contexts, it is called pacta sunt servanda. In other words, agreements are sacrosanct. But here in Nigeria, we've seen many agreements being violated, the objectives not being met, and that has always been, the basis for a lot of friction in many situations. And government being the main culprit for not honoring agreements that it enters into, either domestically or even on the international scene. And this is the background to the conflict with ASUU. In 2009, an agreement was reached. By 2012, ASUU, the Academic Staff Union of Universities, was already complaining that that agreement, in fact, time was ripe for it to even be renegotiated, and government had not implemented it. By 2017, ASUU began to go on strike. All of that conflict. The university system was affected. In one instance, the universities were shut down for about 9 months. Who suffers in this regard? Students will suffer because their academic calendar will be disrupted. Many academics, submitted themselves to the phenomenon of brain drain. Parents complained and all of that. But it was until 2024 that the Tinubu government now intervened and then decided that, okay, we'll set up a committee and then renegotiate these issues and look at the issues. First, the no work, no pay decision that was taken by the Buhari government, the Tinubu government, one of the first things he did was to pay the university teachers their arrears. But in recent times, the university teachers have been asking for further renegotiation. In fact, they even served notice of an intention to go on strike. But government has managed that, and they've gone to the renegotiation table. And this is the outcome that the Minister of Education, Dr. Tunji Alausa, told us yesterday. I think what the Tinubu administration has done is noteworthy, and it's also praiseworthy, because what the Tinubu government has done is just to try to find a solution to years of inaction in terms of the demands of the Academic Staff Union of University Teachers. The minister said, this is not cosmetic. He says it is practical, it is purposeful, and it is transformative. But he realized the basic point that needs to be made. He said there will be faithful implementation, underline faithful implementation, which means what has been renegotiated this time around, would be implemented. And that directives have been given that, all the details will be effective from January 1, 2026. And what are these agreements? Increase in emoluments for university teachers by about 40%. Provision of research allowance to encourage research. Allowances for professors and readers. Professors will now get about 1.7 million, average of 140,000 per month for research. The readers, associate professors, that is, will get about 140,000 per month additional. In addition to all of this, there will also be academic tools that will also be provided. Very good development. That's why I say it is praiseworthy. And what is the other fundamental principle, apart what I refer to as pacta sunt servanda? Is that any serious country that does not take care of its teachers is just voting for doom in the future, because education is so important. And by teachers, we do not mean university teachers alone. Whether they are primary school teachers, secondary school teachers, or university teachers, they need to be well taken care of, because it is when they are encouraged that they can provide the skills base that this country needs to be able to compete internationally. The other sector that is important is health. Yesterday we were talking about health reform. A healthy nation is a wealthy nation. 3, agriculture, primary agriculture is also important because you must feed your people. You must be able to feed your people. But there are other associated issues to what was announced yesterday for ASU. 1, the ASU president, Professor Pimuna, is saying that there are still structural issues that will have to be addressed going forward. Issues, for example, about autonomy, issues about interference of the authorities in university administration. And of course, if you look at the 1992 agreement, there are other issues, all dealing with the second principle I defined about making the education sector, stronger and more potent. Now, SANU, the Senior Staff Association of Nigerian Universities, they too have said their own agreements should also be looked into. NASU, the non-academic staff union of Nigerian universities, are also saying there are also unresolved issues. I think that the Tinubu administration should find, the determination to address all of these issues. I'll run through the other issues quickly. The bid round, the oil licensing bid round, and the meeting that was held by the Upstream Regulatory Commission with stakeholders in the oil and gas. They say they are looking for bidders, prospective bidders, stakeholders and all of that. 50 blocks are on the table. Now, this is just the basic work of the Upstream Regulatory Commission. And Mrs. Enyinsan offered a number of incentives that barriers will be lowered, charges will be reduced, an enabling contest will be provided for people who want to invest, foreign direct investment, foreign investment decisions and all of that. Signature bonus will also be. So if you want people to come and invest, of course, you give them options. Now, Mrs. Enyinsan is continuing where Gbenga Komolafe stopped. I think this licensing bid round was announced when NUPRC was headed by Engineer Gbenga Komolafe, and she has stepped in and she's continuing in that regard. The only word of caution that I will give is that please don't let us hear that you want to go do road shows to go and advertise these oil blocks. No, that was the pattern in the past. You don't need it in the age of technology and digital marketing. Because before you hear it now, they say they want to go to Qatar to do roadshow, to advertise oil blocks in Nigeria. You are going to sell oil blocks in Qatar. In fact, Nigerians are very funny. They can come tomorrow and say, we are going to Venezuela to advertise oil blocks in Nigeria. Or we are going to London.
Even Saudi.
Or we are going to Saudi Arabia. Please, let nobody engage in that kind of ridiculous thing that we used to have with regard to road shows. What the NUPRC should do is to have a strong, well-managed website, put all the information there about the acreages that are on offer, about investment opportunities in that area. The people, the stakeholders in the oil and gas industry, they know what is where. They just want information. They want transparency. You can do that, by having a solid website. You can do that by advertising, even as far as China's Money Post or, Wall Street Journal and all of that. Because we used to waste money with all kinds of ridiculous roadshows. We don't need that this time around. We need to save money. Just get there into the digital space, and then, of course, you get people to come. Finally, General Musa, who said that the friend of a thief is a thief. It is called, the technical word for it is aiding and abetting. Section 7 of the Criminal Code of Nigeria is also, a similar provision is also in the Penal Code, which frowns on aiding and abetting, conspiracy, counseling of criminals, and omission. Omission means that if you know that somebody has committed a crime and then you refuse to report, then of course you are just as guilty as the criminal of the same offense. And aiding and abetting, going about saying bandits and terrorists are our brothers, and we need to protect them. They are not my brothers. So I know the ones who are my brothers. You can't just come and say bandits are your brothers and you have to look out for them. Or saying, oh, kidnapping children is not a very serious crime. What the Minister of Defense has said is that, look, people should join the government in fighting crime, whether you call it banditry or terrorism, and should not be talking out of turns. However, I would like to advise the Minister of Defense and his team to walk the talk. It's not rhetoric we want. We want to see people who are guilty of this offense under Section 7 of the Criminal Code of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and similar provision in the Penal Code arrested and brought to book. Maybe that will send a strong signal to others that, freedom of speech, what is called freedom of speech, also has its limits. It does not include reckless talk that will endanger the lives of other people, and you say, oh, it's free speech. You are just expressing an opinion. No, certain opinions are sanctionable. And you listed, Rufai, you listed some people, some characters. You should include the media. You are talking about commentators. Yes. Is it not media establishments that give them the platform to come and talk out of turn? But however, the allegation will be freedom of speech, and that all, or the defense will be freedom of speech, and that all opinions should play. But the important thing is to always have the other side and to allow the other views, due respect.
Absolutely. But they also say your freedom ends where my nose begins. So, there's nothing that is ultimate. There are limits and restrictions within everything. Let me continue on the topic of the Minister of Defense and these statements that he has made. I picked out some things that really stood out to me. The first was that specific reference to our brothers, which we have heard, of course, time and time again from various players in the space. Now, timing-wise, I think it was important for him to make this statement. Why do I say that? Because we've just heard news over the past few days that the United States has labeled the Muslim Brotherhood groups in Egypt, Lebanon, and Jordan as terrorist organizations. Now, not all organizations, especially here in Nigeria, where we find that there are several different types of organizations that will refer to themselves as, brotherhood and so forth. However, it's now important for us to make that distinction, especially from the state level, that we are separating certain groups that are going about their business from being labeled as our brothers within a brotherhood or a religious organization that may mimic some of the organizations that are now falling under spotlight globally and are now being designated as terror organizations, especially given the fact that we're trying to continue a collaborative relationship with the United States. We are not trying to further escalate, some of the tensions that may exist in that relationship. Furthermore, he said there comes a point where we have to know where to draw the line between compassion and complicity. And I thought this was very important because unfortunately, generally, as a national system, not just in areas where we're seeing terrorism and banditry, compassion seems to be what is pushed above complicity. Compassion seems to be the order of the day, and it has replaced justice in many instances. And that's why we are talking about negotiating with bandits. That's why we're talking about, sympathy extended towards these players, because they argue that, these players are also victims of circumstance. My father always used to say something very profound. He says, one man's freedom fighter is another man's terrorist. However, in the absence of justice, the narrative becomes blurred. And where can we take this back to? Let's take it back, as today is January 15th, let's take it back to no victor, no vanquished, which was a war termination doctrine. It was a doctrine that was created to say, the war has ended. Let us create a spirit of unity to move the nation forward. But unfortunately, it has now been implemented as a system of governance. What do I mean by this? I mean that any systematic situation that causes, especially that has violence at the center of it, has now created a culture where we say that, no, number one, we silence them. Number one, there's no justice. And number two, the perpetrators of those crimes are somehow incorporated into the system and placated by various contracts, promotions, positions, and so forth. this trend can be looked at not just in the northern part or middle belt where we're currently seeing an upsurge in insurgency, even if you look at the Niger Delta, where we say, okay, fine, that amnesty was able to placate the militant activity that was happening at the time. But what happened? We brought the militant actors into the elite circle, but the systemic challenges that caused these issues still exist. You look at the issues around Ogoniland at the moment. Have we been able to clean up the actual foundational cause of that advocacy that happened at that time? Now we look at a different part of the country where they are putting forward an argument and they're saying that, well, we have ungoverned spaces. We have groups of people who needed to protect themselves because the state failed to protect them. So why are they being criminalized? Again, you see how this concept or doctrine of no victor, no vanquished, and being used not as a war doctrine, but now being abused as a system of governance and a system of, instead of a system of conflict management, when we are supposed to be moving to conflict transformation. And so as long as we continue in this pampering of people who have gone against the Constitution, who have broken the law, then this culture will go on. And unfortunately, what it does is it protects elites, it expands the elites, but it means that citizens will never have redress. Citizens will never have justice in a system where we say that anybody who has access to violence will be able to be incorporated into the elites and will be forgiven. Their sins will be forgiven and they will move on. I'll quickly touch on FG, the federal government, and ASU. After 16 years, I mean, I think we're all still holding our breath here when we see the implementation and the rollout. We applaud the fact that the impasse has been ended. However, ASU made one very, very valuable point, which is that as much as issues around welfare and salaries may have been resolved, there's one niggling issue that they still have concerns about, and that's university autonomy. Now, we know that the culture of university autonomy has continued to be eroded, even though constitutionally it is enshrined. These universities are supposed to enjoy autonomy. We know that the more we've seen academic officials or professors and those in the academic space get involved in politics, in the electoral process, in the election process, we've continued to see the erosion of autonomy. We now see that it's now part of a political game. Now, we can't have this intersection between education and politics or governance and elections. It is not good for education. It is not good for the development of our young people, because it means that merit is out of the window. It means that the context of which the sanctity of academia is not being respected because politics is dominating the day. And so that needs to be addressed. And in saying all of this, however, I do commemorate today as being our Armed Forces Remembrance Day. And I do hope that throughout the day, as we look at the various activities that will be happening around the nation, we can all join in the spirit of celebrating our armed forces, those deceased, those in action, and continue to lift their morale, boost their morale, and urge them to keep fighting the good fight. We're behind you.